weeks since the assault on the Capitol, greeting members of the police and being visible, being present during all this.
Well, there's probably not been one more loyal ally to President Trump than Vice President Pence. And before 2 weeks ago, any kind of rift, any daylight, any division would have simply been unthinkable. And yet there he was in the Capitol on January 6th, had to be rushed out by Secret Service as this marauding gang of rioters and insurrectionists beat down the door, literally. And we now know with some dangerous intent, and that seems to have riven the relationship between Vice President Pence and President Trump. I want to bring Hallie Jackson, if she's with us, into this conversation because it's so stark. I think if you go back, Hallie, and you probably have them all memorized and looked at every speech that Vice President Pence ever gave, I don't know if he ever said and had any speech that did not mention in quite flattering terms President Trump. And yet now he has chosen on this final day to come here for the inauguration of the new president as opposed to attending the going away party at Joint Base Andrews that President Trump had organized.
In speech after speech, Savannah, the vice president didn't just mention his boss, President Trump. He would go out of his way in very lavish terms to give him the credit for whatever the vice president was there to conduct the business of. That's the kind of relationship that they had, loyal every single step of the way until January 6th. And it began when the vice president was back here at the Capitol. He was here for that counting of the Electoral College vote. And throughout the hours that he was in a secure room, according to sources that I've talked to, President Trump did not once reach out to the vice president. And it sounds like he is several leaders getting introduced here at the west front of the Capitol. At no point did President Trump reach out. That angered the vice president. He spoke about that to some of his friends and colleagues about how after all of this, after all the loyalty, this is what happens, as the president was then sending out angry tweets about the vice president. It is so significant that he is here today. He actually left a letter, we understand, from a White House official for Vice President-elect Kamala Harris at the White House. We know, of course, based on our team's reporting, that President Trump also left a note for President-elect Biden that, we're told, was left in the Oval Office by an aide at some point. So that is waiting, of course, for the president-elect when he arrives. And we're watching now this split-screen moment. I'm not sure if we have a shot of Air Force One arriving down in South Florida. That is where President Trump will call home for the foreseeable future. And down at Mar-a-Lago, you have about 100 of the president's supporters who have lined the route, as we see right now, this split screen. He is now going to be disembarking, getting off the plane for the last time as Air Force One, and he will be greeted by some of his supporters who have gathered for him there in Palm Beach. A very different scene than what we're seeing here at the west front of the Capitol, where there have been glimpses of bipartisanship. Congressman Jim Clyburn, for example, taking selfies with Congressman Steve Scalise. You had the Bushes walk immediately over to Clyburn, for example, congregate with them. Supreme Court justices, including Justice Sotomayor here, she, remember, will be the one who will be swearing in Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. A real moment of the first Latina Supreme Court justice, and of course the first woman of color to become the vice president, as we see the vice president and his wife now come out onto the balcony to a round of applause. As I look behind me here, everybody's standing and watching Vice President Mike Pence and Karen Pence as he assumes those traditional roles. He was here. He was the one delivering that speech in the moments after the insurrectionists took over at the Capitol. Once the all-clear was given, it was Vice President Pence who came out and said democracy must prevail. It was Vice President Pence who returned to the Capitol to thank those National Guard troops that have moved in, not President Trump. It was the Vice President who, over the last 4 days, has been traveling, thanking the troops, and conducting the duties of the office. Savannah.
And Holly, that is the split screen that no one had exactly expected. Vice President Pence at the inauguration and the open door to Air Force One for the final departure of President Trump and the First Lady as they arrive in Florida.
56 minutes left in the Trump presidency, and it's remarkable. We talk about the transfer of power, and literally at 12 o'clock, 11:59. All the powers, all the weight, all the duties, nuclear codes, things that most of us don't have to think about on a daily basis, suddenly land in your lap.
But it's different in terms of logistics, because in every inauguration, except for 152 years ago, the outgoing president and the incoming president were there in the same place, and there was, in a way, a literal handoff. That won't take place here, but the business of government will continue, and arrangements have been made so that there will be continuity of government. And at the moment that the oath is sworn on the old Biden family Bible, in about an hour from now, we will have a new president. And perhaps as we look at this open door, President Trump has taken a long last look around and saying goodbye to some of the staff members who work on Air Force One, and who certainly he's gotten to know over these last 4 years.
Certainly a journey that Donald Trump has made many times aboard this plane or its twin plane between Washington and Florida, spending a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago. And there is President Trump. A rather elaborate send-off at Joint Base Andrews a few hours ago. We don't know what sort of greeting. We see the armored vehicle there right at the steps, so we don't. Well, we'll see what happens.
And yes, Melania Trump has changed into her Florida fashions for the occasion. She left Washington, and it's cold for the sunny skies of Florida, and has changed her wardrobe accordingly as they will drive off. But as you mentioned, 60 minutes and counting until we have a new president.
And what was it he said at the end of his remarks today? I'll be back in some form.
He said, I'll be back in some form, absolutely, and definitely did not give any indication he plans to leave the political stage, but in what form that takes, we'll see. And now we see the Trump children descend the staircase, but this is the moment where the split screen goes away and all eyes go on the United States Capitol, because we are about to inaugurate a new president, and the seat of government and those who hold power in our government are ready. We've got 6 of the 9 Supreme Court justices in attendance. The 3 oldest justices are not there because of pandemic concerns. We have congressional leaders, and we have about 1,000 guests, which is about a 20th of what normally would happen if there weren't a pandemic and these grave security concerns. But to our eyes, as you see the vice president there, it's all the trappings and all of the traditions that we would come to expect from an inauguration.
Kind of wondering what his political future he may be pondering. Again, kept a higher profile, we'll say, over the last couple of weeks as we have struggled with what happened at the Capitol.
His fortunes have changed quite a bit, and again, as mentioned, there was no greater loyal ally to President Trump than Mike Pence, but because supporters of the president were led to believe that there was anything that could be done to change the election, and Vice President Pence did not do that because he did not possess the power to do it. Quickly, that support became chants of hang Mike Pence inside the halls of that building 2 weeks ago. And yes, that's Alex Rodriguez. For those who are wondering, he's also Mr. JEO. Jennifer Lopez is going to be performing at this inauguration.
I heard him. I heard him interview somewhere yesterday talking about how nervous she is about it. You know, it's a tough venue.
Well, the Super Bowl is one thing, but this is indeed, and Lady Gaga is going to be performing the national anthem. So again, you can't help but enjoy eavesdropping, at least with your eyes, on what's taking place at the Capitol. Former presidents milling about with congressional leaders and A-list celebrities, and the Biden family has come in now. We've got 3 former presidents, 6 Supreme Court justices, and untold members of Congress as well.
Looking at President Obama, we're reminded, he kept his silence for much of the last 4 years, but down the stretch, he became a very powerful advocate and a powerful voice on behalf of Joe Biden.
That's Eugene Goodman, who has been given the honorary designation today of the acting Deputy Sergeant of Arms. And if you're not familiar with his story, then we'll try to do it justice in these few moments we have. He's walking with Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff. And he has that point of honor because he was on duty, Capitol Police Officer, on that day, January 6th. And as the mob approached, the camera captured his quick thinking as he led the mob away from what he knew to be an open door right into the Senate chamber. And in doing so, could have perhaps prevented untold harm. and he has been commended for that action, and there's talk of a Congressional Medal of Honor for him, and today he has the honor of escorting Doug Emhoff and soon-to-be Vice President Kamala Harris.
So many images of that day, and so many of them horrifying, but that was truly one of bravery and quick thinking, and all the things that we would hope in a horrible situation like that. And so Kamala Harris, Doug Emhoff will make their way to the door and will be officially announced and presented as they take their place for the inauguration and swearing in.
And perhaps it's a measure of our times and how the news cycle and so much history being made as we speak that we haven't really paused, Lester, to note that we will have the first female vice president in our nation's history in an hour, and first Black American vice president, first Indian American. So there will be all kinds of history made today.
The acting Deputy House Sergeant at Arms, Kevin Grubbs, and the acting Deputy Senate Sergeant at Arms, United States Capitol Police Officer Private First Class Eugene O. Goodman.
And that earned a rousing applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Devi Harris, and Mr. Douglas Emhoff.
Joe Biden is tapping elbows there with President Obama and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris as she and her husband, Doug Emhoff, may take up their position. It's worth noting that President-elect Biden has said he wants a relationship, vice presidential relationship, not unlike the one he enjoyed with Barack Obama, which he was always the last voice and the last person in the room at a time of grave and important decisions.
Well, you make a good point because he is going to be president, but he's been vice president. So he knows all the highs and lows of that job. I mean, for a long time it was always joked that it was the worst job in Washington, that there was really no prescribed duties, but it's become in the last few administrations quite important, quite momentous. We mentioned Joe Biden, you have to mention Dick Cheney under President Bush, a hugely influential vice president. So Kamala Harris certainly will have that opportunity, and just the magnitude of what needs to be done when you're talking about an economic travails that this country is in, pandemic. There's so much work to be done. It's really a two-person job, so we'll see if they are able to forge that kind of functioning relationship.
A lot of pride will be felt as we noted, the first woman of color will take the oath. She will take the oath first, we should note. Momentarily, we expect the introduction of the president-elect and Dr. Jill Biden. Their family there, as you can see, enjoying the moments or trying to stay warm, or both. I'm going to assume they got heaters up there on the platform.
Well, there's one good thing about masks. They do keep your face warm, so perhaps that's one plus. The otherwise,
So that's one giving another one.
I'll give you one, right? the other one is protection, of course. Yeah.
There is that.
Yes, protection from COVID. Let's bring in Chuck Todd and Andrew Mitchell, who are watching these images with us. And for all that has happened, at least these moments right now, Chuck, feel like the inaugurations that we've seen before and that hallmark of American democracy that people in this country have come to count on.
I'll be honest, this has been an elixir of sorts. This is the last hour just to see the normalcy of people in both parties participating in this. I mean, look, it's a necessary elixir, and I think it, in many ways, is why Joe Biden won the election. It was sort of this feeling that he, if anybody can create a moment, a unifying moment, it's him, that he has the right, he just has the right perspective. He almost is, he's been through so much himself that gives him the right level of empathy the country is desperately looking for here. And I'll just be honest, this is just, it's nice to hear the patriotic music. I mean, we took some of this for granted until 2 weeks ago. I'll be honest. And so I have looked at all of this through a different set of eyes since January 6th today. Andrea.
Yeah, I covered Congress for many years and have been up on that podium, and seeing this restores a sense that we're okay. We're going to be okay. The country's going to be okay. It's just extraordinary to see all of these leaders who have worked together, and I had Mitch McConnell and others coming out. There is a bipartisan note. I saw a note earlier from Marco Rubio that the reason he is not here, and there you see the Bidens, Savannah, coming through. But Marco Rubio just quickly is saying that he's not here only because he is rushing to confirm Ariel Haynes, who had a confirmation hearing yesterday and overcome any Republican objections.
As we watch the president-elect, soon-to-be president, and soon-to-be first lady approach, and we saw the congressional leaders, I do think, Chuck, to pick up on what you were talking about, there is that almost feeling of defiance, institutional defiance. Congress saying, wait a minute, you attacked us 2 weeks ago, but just as they came in the late hours of the night and completed their business on January 6th, this is a continuation of that thread, their constitutional duty to inaugurate a new president at high noon, January 20th, that is written in our founding documents, and in 45 minutes it will happen. And there does feel like there's that defiance and determination on the part of Republicans and Democrats.
I want to share with you, Savannah, I want to pick up on this. I want to share with you, I talked to somebody who was pretty high up in the Bush administration a couple weeks ago. He said, I know you guys in the press are beating yourselves up, members of Congress are. He says, you know what? The guardrails did work over these last 4 years. They got bruised, they got beaten, and we've seen, but we're, in some ways, and almost today itself is a reminder, as much as we thought, oh my God, look how vulnerable our system is to sort of crumbling. A lot of the institutions, while they were battered and bruised, whether it's ours in the press or Congress or other institutions, they worked, they held up. And this person said to me, you know what, I don't want to share his name because it would just give that person a lot of problems. But he sort of said, you know what, in 20 years, we may look back at this in the same way we look back at the McCarthy years and say, you know what, the system worked, we weeded it out. And this morning, right now, is a reminder, our guardrails did hold up.
The weather may be a different story. We're seeing a few little snow flurries out there, and we're starting to see some of the introductions, more congressional leaders coming in. I'm squinting at the screen to see who we can identify, but any moment now that we know that President-elect Biden and soon-to-be First Lady Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, are on the move inside the Capitol and about to make their big entrance.
And we're going to hear remarks shortly from Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri on behalf of the Inauguration Committee.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. and Dr. Jill Biden. welcome the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Vice President Pence, President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, members of Congress and the judicial branch, former presidents and first ladies, vice presidents, leaders from abroad, and a whole bunch of Bidens. America, welcome to the 59th presidential inauguration, where in just a few moments, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take their solemn oaths. This ceremony is the culmination of 244 years of a democracy. It is the moment when leaders brought to this stage by the will of the people promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish it and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, guardians of our country. Have we become too jaded, too accustomed to the ritual of the passing of the torch of democracy to truly appreciate what a blessing and a privilege it is to witness this moment? I think not. 2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does. Goes forward as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This conveyance of a sacred trust between our leaders and our people takes place in front of this shining Capitol dome for a reason. When Abraham Lincoln gave his first inaugural address in front of this Capitol, the dome was only partially constructed, braced by ropes of steel. He promised he would finish it. He was criticized for spending funds on it during the Civil War. To those critics, he replied, "If the people see the Capitol going on, it is a sign we intend the Union shall go on." And it did, and it will. Generations of Americans gave their lives to preserve our republic in this place. Great legislation to protect civil rights and economic security and lead the world was debated and crafted under this dome. Now it falls on all of us, not just the two leaders we are inaugurating today, to take up the torch of our democracy, not as a weapon of political arson, but as an instrument for good. We pledge today never to take our democracy for granted as we celebrate its remarkable strength. We celebrate its resilience, its grit. We celebrate the ordinary people doing extraordinary things for our nation, the doctors and nurses on the front line of this pandemic, the officers in the Capitol, a new generation never giving up hope for justice. We celebrate a new president, Joe Biden, who vows to restore the soul of America and cross the river of our divides to a higher plane. And we celebrate our first African American, first Asian American, and first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, who stands on the shoulders of so many on this platform who have forged the way to this day. When she takes the oath of office, little girls and boys across the world will know that anything and everything is possible. And in the end, that is America, our democracy, a country of so much good. And today, on these Capitol steps and before this glorious field of flags, we rededicate ourselves to its cause. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce to you the senator who has worked with me and so many others to make this ceremony possible. My friend and the chair of the inaugural committee, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt.
I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved, at least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning. Of all the things we considered, I don't think snow was on my agenda until I walked out the door a moment ago. But thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and thanks to the other members of the Joint Congressional Committee on the inauguration as we officially begin the 59th inaugural ceremony. I also want to thank the Joint Committee staff and our partners, particularly our security partners, for the way they've dealt with unprecedented circumstances. When I chaired the inauguration 4 years ago, I shared President Reagan's 1981 description of this event as commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Americans have celebrated this moment during war, during depression, and now during pandemic. Once again, all three branches of our government come together as the Constitution envisions. Once again, we renew our commitment to our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union. That theme for this inauguration, our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union, was announced by the Joint Committee before the election, with the belief that the United States can only fulfill its promise and set an example for others if we are always working to be better than we have been. The Constitution established that determined democracy with its first three words, declaring the people as the source of the government. The Articles of Confederation hadn't done that. The Magna Carta hadn't done that. Only the Constitution says the government exists because the people are the source of the reason it exists. They immediately followed those first three words with the words to form a more perfect union. The founders did not say to form a perfect union. They did not claim that in our new country nothing would need to be improved. Fortunately, they understood that always working to be better would be the hallmark of a great democracy. The freedoms we have today, the nation we have today, is not here just because it happened, and they aren't complete. A great democracy working through the successes and failures of our history, striving to be better than it had been. And we are more than we have been, and we are less than we hope to be. The assault on our Capitol at this very place just 2 weeks ago reminds us that a government designed to balance and check itself is both fragile and resilient. During the last year, the pandemic challenged our free and open society and called for extraordinary determination and sacrifice, and still challenges us today. Meeting that challenge head on have been and are healthcare workers, scientists, first responders, essential frontline workers, and so many others we depend on in so many ways. Today we come to this moment, people all over the world, as we're here, are watching and will watch what we do here. Our government comes together. The Congress and the courts join the transition of executive responsibility. One political party more pleased today and on every inaugural day than the other. But this is not a moment of division, it's a moment of unification. A new administration begins and brings with it a new beginning. And with that, our great national debate goes forward, and a determined democracy will continue to be essential in pursuit of a more perfect union and a better future for all Americans. What a privilege for me to join you today. Thank you. I'm pleased to call to the podium a longtime friend of the President-elect and his family, Father Leo O'Donovan, to lead us in an invocation. Please stand if you are able and remain standing for the national anthem and the pledge to our flag.
Daddy, you did record here. It did record here. It did record here.
Gracious and merciful God, at this sacred time we come before you in need, indeed on our knees. But we come still more with hope, and with our eyes raised anew to the vision of a more perfect union in our land, a union of all our citizens to promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We are a people of many races, creeds, and colors, national backgrounds, cultures, and styles, now far more numerous and on land much vaster than when Archbishop John Carroll wrote his prayer for the inauguration of George Washington 232 years ago. Archbishop Carroll prayed that you, O Creator of all, would assist with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude the President of these United States, that his administration may be conducted in righteousness and be eminently useful to your people. Today we confess our past failures to live according to our vision of equality, inclusion, and freedom for all. Yet we resolutely commit still more now to renewing the vision, to caring for one another in word and deed, especially the least fortunate among us, and so becoming a light for the world. There is a power in each and every one of us that lives by turning to every other one of us, a thrust of the Spirit to cherish and care and stand by others, and above all those most in need. It is called love, and its path is to give ever more of itself. Today it is called American patriotism, born not of power and privilege, but of care for the common good, with malice toward none, and with charity for all. For our new president, we beg of you the wisdom Solomon sought when he knelt before you and prayed for an understanding heart, so that I can govern your people and know the difference between right and wrong. We trust in the counsel of the letter of James. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Pope Francis has reminded us how important it is to dream together. By ourselves, he wrote, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. Be with us, holy mystery of love, as we dream together. Help us under our new president to reconcile the people of our land, restore our dream and invest it with peace and justice and the joy that is the overflow of love. To the glory of your name, forever. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our national colors by the Armed Forces Color Guard, the singing of our national anthem, and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies and gentlemen, here for the singing of our national anthem, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band, please welcome Lady Gaga. Please welcome from the city of South Fulton, Georgia Fire and Rescue Department, President of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 3920, Fire Captain Andrea M. Hall for the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Daddy, it did record here, ba? Okay, Mark,
United States